I'm ready.
So I want to start off by talking about a presentation about how marijuana, yes, it is a drug, but our country has a policy where use of drugs in small amounts is okay. Just like in alcohol, tobacco, and other prescription drugs, our country feels that using these drugs in tolerable and manageable amounts is okay. Through my presentation, I'm going to demonstrate how marijuana should be legalized to help prevent crime, open up a new cash flow for our government, and allow our cops to begin policing other illegal activities. By looking at the past and present and future of the marijuana industry and the cultures associated, I will state my opinions on why I think marijuana should be legalized. First off, I'm going to be talking about is an issue that's hit somewhat close to home with me in the Mexican cartels. I'm from San Diego, and I've noticeably seen, I go down to Mexico very frequently, and I've seen the damage that these cartels have how it's torn through the country. It is estimated in a New York Times article that 60% of the revenue for these cartels comes through the marijuana industry. And while I believe that many of the while if it were to be legalized, all of the 60% would not just go away. The cartels would find a way to reimburse themselves and get money through other crops. It would be a very heavy-hitting hit to their revenues. And there's also, the war on drugs has also created an economic conundrum, because the harder and harder we force to make it illegal, the more it drives up the prices of these of the drugs, which also then causes people willing to take more risks to get the drugs to their customers, which then get more people who are doing it because there's a greater reward for doing it. And these Mexican cartels, I believe, through history, is very similar to the Prohibition. Al Capone and the dangerous and the organized crime that the Prohibition promoted is very similar to the Mexican cartels. Now, the illegal activities help fund gangs, because gangs need some way of making money. They need money for their guns and their transporting all the different things. And right now, the revenue of choice is marijuana. And in the current drug classification, it's a Schedule I drug, which means that according to our government, it has no medical benefits. And recently, President Obama even re-administered it as a Schedule I drug. Schedule I drug, which puts it on the same page as heroin and ecstasy and cocaine and a lot of other more serious drugs, in my opinion. But the conundrum I have with this is there's currently 16 states, along with the District of Columbia, that have legalized medical marijuana. So for a drug to be a Schedule I drug, it has no medical benefits. It's kind of hard to see that. And also, in the inmates right now, 12.7% of state federal inmates and 12.4% of federal inmates are in there for marijuana-related crimes, which is a $1 billion proportion of the prison, which is a huge part of our entire economic gap. And our country right now is in a huge recession, and I feel that this will also help cut down the cost of it. And currently, that New York Times article also stated that 1/15 of high school students smoke weed every day. And that's not just an occasional user. 1/15 say that they use it on a daily basis. And I personally feel that the current system is failing if 1 out of 15 people in high school admit that they're using it every day. That yes, it is a problem, and we need to figure out a new way of trying to control the uses of it in our kids. To look at this, I feel a good reference is Portugal. In 2001, they abolished all criminal penalties for all drugs. This includes heroin, cocaine, crack, all drugs. They did this to try and help limit the amount of drugs, but instead they also said that police officers are still looking for drugs, not looking for drugs, but if they see somebody doing it, they give them optional drug awareness class and therapy, and these classes are 100% completely optional, and at any time you are open to start going to these classes. And this happened in 2001, and in 2009 Time Magazine published an article about how this, I guess you could kind of say, experiment, or what this new found place is going on in Portugal. And according to Glenn Greenwald, who's one of the lead researchers on this case, he said that judging by every metric, decriminalization in Portugal has been a resounding success. They said there are benefits across the board, such as a decrease in the case of HIV and AIDS. There's a decrease in the amount of users. I was reading, the Time Magazine stated that in 2009 there were more cocaine users in the USA than marijuana smokers in Portugal. And I found that, this is per capita, of course, because the sheer numbers would obviously be greater in the USA, but this Portugal method, I feel like, has been successful. And while I don't think that legalizing all drugs to start off with would be the first step we should make, I feel that through, based off the links from Prohibition, that legalizing marijuana could be a possible solution to the amount of kids that are now claiming to abuse marijuana. The effects of legalization. I also wanted to look at, if per se that weed was to be legalized, I want to see what the effects of it would be. In California alone, just through taxation, it is estimated that $1.4 billion would be generated. And these numbers also came from a Time Magazine article that I read. The reasons, they said that this was also only from the tax revenue and not from the other economic stimulus that it would provide through other industries that it would help benefit, such as the growers and stuff like that. It would also get people out of jails. As I stated earlier, there's a huge amount, 12% of our population is in jail simply for marijuana. And these are not only putting more people away from their families, it's also putting more people for us, taxpayers, to support. And these, that $1 billion is starting to become a burden on our economy. And it also allows cops to concentrate on other issues. Instead of having to worry about driving around finding the kids smoking weed, they can start concentrating on the kids and the robberies and the muggings, and help keep our streets a lot safer. Who wants it illegal? This is recently, it was 2 years ago, there was Proposition 19 in California. It was, I don't know if any of you guys know about it, but it was to make weed completely legal in California for everybody under 21, no medical cards needed. And while it did not pass, it became clearly evident from the lobbyists, because all of that has to be publicized, of who gives money and who to each side. And so during that study, a lot of companies could get an idea of who wanted weed legalized. And the police unions were some of the bigger proponents against weed legalization. And this is and this is because of again, this would cut a huge part of their funding. The drug wars is a huge percentage of the cops' funding, and if this were to be cut out, obviously the war on drugs, a percentage of their budget would also be cut out. So right now they want, obviously, as much revenue as they can. And also the private prison corporations. Right now, America does not have as much public, owned by themselves, prisons to occupy all the criminals in the world, and so they have to lease out these criminals to private industries. And as stated, $1 billion industry for these marijuana criminals, and obviously these private prisons don't want a huge portion of the revenue to go away, so they're again proponents of the illegalization of marijuana. And also the alcohol groups. In the Time article, they stated that the lobby groups wanted put in $10,000 for no on Prop 19, and that was just one group. There are also several other groups who or against marijuana legalization. And then pharmaceutical groups. These are some of the biggest proponents against marijuana legalization. They're also some of the biggest lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and they don't want weed legalized because of it's a cheap, simple drug. It can be grown at home, and these pharmaceutical drugs, it drives people maybe possibly away from the Advils and the other types of drugs that are a huge percentage of their income. And also the cigarette companies, which is, again, one of the biggest lobbyists in Washington, D.C. And I feel that those last three are some of the three biggest lobbyists and the three biggest opponents in the marijuana legalization process. And then I kind of wanted to finish off on a study about the mortality rates. Wow, it's a little sad. WebMD did a study on the marijuana legalization, and the doctor who was conducting the study said that although use of marijuana is not harmless, the current knowledge base does not support the assertion that any notable adverse public health impact in relation to mortality. And it's kind of like supports the claim that yes, it is true that while marijuana is not healthy for you, it does not claim the 443,000 lives that the CDC says that tobacco causes every year, which is 1 out of every 5 deaths annually. And of those 1 in 5 deaths, there's also another 1 in 20 people. For every 1 person who dies of smoking tobacco, there's a 1 in 20 person who's also suffering from a serious illness from the tobacco-related instances. Then MSNBC said that 75,000 people die a year from alcohol-related deaths, whether that's driving, alcohol, just any form of alcohol-related activity. And so the kind of the last point I wanted to make tonight is how while marijuana, yes, there are definitely some problems with it, and it is a drug, it does need to be controlled. The current system is not working, it is not keeping it off the streets, it's not keeping it away from our kids, and I feel that based off past history and current examples, it should be legalized. And while yes, there are still serious obstacles to overcome, but based off the data I've seen, it is a clear and logical choice to be a proponent of the legalization of marijuana.
Very good. Good job. Very